I'm an artist, and I like thinking about death. But it wasn't always this way. I didn't think about death at all until last year, when one night I had a very strange dream. I fell asleep and found myself under big blue skies with rolling white clouds. Beside me in my dream, there was an old man. He was traveling from town to town in California. He drove a big, rusty pickup truck, and behind it, he pulled this strange, wheeled contraption. It was long and dark-colored, and it had a big door at one end. The man would park on street corners and sit outside in the sun. When curious people came up, he would open the door and invite them in. They would only be inside a few minutes, but when they came out, something had changed. On their faces was a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Some of them would smile, some would laugh, some had tears in their eyes. Before long, a huge line had formed along the entire block. People would go in, and when they came out, whatever they had seen inside had changed them. I woke from the dream, and I knew what they had seen inside was death. Death? How could this be? My rational mind tried to file the dream away, but it refused to go. I couldn't get it out of my head. I wanted to know, what was it they had seen? The dream left me with a question. If death has something to show us, how can we get close to death without dying? I was 25 at the time, and while I had lost people in my life, nothing could explain this sudden, intense curiosity. Before I knew it, my question turned into a quest. My curiosity followed me out the door. I went running in the park, and all around me I could see that the natural world is dying constantly to make way for new life. My curiosity pushed me to learn about death rituals around the world. I learned that in Ghana, families design elaborate fantasy coffins in the shape of giant fish or chickens or pianos to transport those they love on from this life. I talked with biologists and learned that every minute, over 300 million of the cells in our bodies die. And my curiosity led me to an amazing community, a death cafe, a group of 20 or so people who meet every Monday in a library in San Francisco to eat cake, drink tea, and talk about death. While most of us don't think about death, often don't talk about death, or maybe flat out avoid it at all costs, there were people like me who thought there was something here. Death was curious. But still, to me, it remained a great mystery. Then, one day, I found myself wandering around the Palace of Fine Arts. I walked into this small, dark room, and I found these strange-looking headsets sitting on top of pedestals. I picked one up and slipped it on, and I was engulfed by the roar of an enormous waterfall in Iceland. I looked above me at the sky, and below me at the ground, and all around me at this incredible landscape. And while rationally I knew I was still standing in San Francisco, every other part of me believed that if I took a step forward, I would fall off that cliff. This was crazy. It was super weird. It felt like time travel. I took the headset off, and someone explained this was called virtual reality, or VR. VR is an experiential technology. It immerses us in a 360-degree digital environment that looks and feels real. In VR, we can walk on the surface of Mars. We can fly with the wings of a bird. We can experience the sonic universe known only to a man who is blind. I felt a shock of sudden recognition. This was the fantastic contraption from my dream. I called 3 of my creative friends in San Francisco. I told them, I have a crazy idea. What if we used virtual reality to explore death? They said, yes, that is a crazy idea. We're in. So we decided to produce a VR art show. We would invite any creators who were working in this medium to explore death and dying, to share their projects. We'd call the show The Art of Dying. Now, we had no idea what we were doing. This was new technology. It had just come out to consumers last year. None of us had worked with it before. We also had an interesting design challenge. Death is a taboo topic, and we wanted to be sure that anyone who walked through the doors, whether they had recently lost someone or had never been close to death, felt like they could explore a safe space. So we came up with the idea of designing physical environments, built installations, to house each of our virtual projects so that you could see the world you were about to step into and could enter and exit with the help of a compassionate volunteer who could hold space for whatever might arise. As the show got closer, I started getting really worried that maybe this idea was too off the wall. Would people be scared off by VR? Did it stoke fears of a dystopian future in which we're all plugged into a giant machine and Mark Zuckerberg is in charge? If that wasn't scary enough, this was a show about dying. I didn't know if anyone would come. But they did. The show sold out for 3 nights in October of last year in San Francisco. Here's a look inside. My team and I were amazed to find that so many creators were working with this medium to explore death. It was like there was something in the water. We had over 50 artists involved in our show. I'd like to share 3 of the experiences with you today. These are excerpts from longer pieces. And remember that in VR, you can look all around you. You are immersed in a world. Last year, Professor John Benton lay down on his back and listened as a Tibetan Lama guided him and others through the trainings from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. John knew that now with immersive technologies, we can recreate and share direct experiences of this same kind. So he and 2 colleagues went about adapting this ancient and beloved text into a tool that we can use to begin to prepare for the final act of dying. The full experience is 12 minutes long. This is a prototype. And at the show, people experienced it lying down with VR headsets on their heads that let them look all around them.
Bardo is a Tibetan word that simply means transition or in-between state. The book known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Todril Chenmo, means the great liberation through hearing in the Bardo. This is a unique book of knowledge, a kind of guidebook or travelogue of death and after-death states. Though while the Bardo teachings are concerned with the process of dying, they are fundamentally about how we are living right now, at this very moment.
But what happens when death finds us, when we don't expect it? This next experience is a sound journey. I like to think of that as the original VR. At the show, people wore headphones and blindfolds. We strapped subwoofers to people's backs so they could feel the audio throughout their entire bodies. When we die, hearing is the last sense to go.
As my eyes closed in death, they opened in a beautiful, radiant, white, limitless light. It was crystal clear. I found myself pulled up through the light. It was like I was being sucked through the air by a powerful, yet gentle, loving force. I wasn't afraid, though. All I could feel was love.
What will we feel at the end? What will we see? Do we have any way to know? This next experience comes from 2 university students in the Netherlands. This is their vision of what that transition might look like. Many at the show interpreted it as a journey down the archetypical river of death. I think this piece asks us to consider the question, how might imagination itself drive our experience of dying? When we took our headsets off, some of us were smiling, some of us were laughing, some of us had tears in our eyes. But we got to talk about death, and it was cool. People actually wanted to talk about it. People wanted to share. The Art of Dying became more than an art show. It became a conversation. The projects were so diverse, so colorful, and each one provided a different entry point into talking about death. They showed us that there is no one way to understand it. Death may be the veil that we can't see behind, but artists have been painting that veil in 1,000 colors for centuries. In Sufi tradition, there is a kind of conversation known as sohbet. Sohbet is the transmission of wisdom through art and through stories. Only by abstracting the great mysteries of existence can we uncover the truth within our hearts as seekers. Too often in life, we meet death when we're unprepared, and fear and anxiety take the reins. At the show, we found a space to explore death, to meet it on our own terms. We did this the same way we explore anything in real life, through experience. We got to step into the art and bring our hopes and our fears, our memories, our imaginations along with us. We got to use our bodies and our emotions in addition to our minds. This kind of interaction is called embodied cognition, and it's a way of learning that takes place on a level deeper and more complex than our rational thinking mind. In a way, at the show, we became part of the medium. Our experience was the art. The whole thing was a curious paradox. By creating and sharing art using virtual reality, this medium of illusion that is not unlike a dream in that it lets us test and simulate things out of our wildest imagination, we got to have a conversation with death now, while we are living. This conversation made us feel more alive. As technologists hail the end of the information age and the coming of an age of experience in which not facts, but new ways of feeling and perceiving lie at our fingertips, I think we have an opportunity to inquire more deeply than ever before into dimensions of the human experience, to ask new questions, or maybe to ask very old questions in new ways, and to learn about things even as scary as death from a place of curiosity, receptivity, and wonder. I can't wait to see what we dream up. Thank you.